Grid is, for those who have not been part of Grid yet, Grid is a national networking group for hyper-local investor-related topics. And so we are proud to choose specific topics that people are interested in. Michelle, actually, which I think Michelle's on virtually, would like to know how we do our home transformation. So I'm working on figuring out when we can do that, because we do in our Cullen Company business, we do home transformation often, where we literally fund on the front end or help fund on the front end a transformation so that it will end up netting the seller more money in the resale. So it's really a fun project. So that's coming in the future. So I'm Rebecca, for those who don't know me. I own Cullen Company, and we work out of here. Hopefully people will just come in. I may have to open the door, sorry. Come in! Hey, come on in.
So you haven't been to your office.
Welcome. Well, we just got started, so if you wouldn't mind signing in when you have a moment.
Sure.
And would love, so for those of us who are new, and those of us who are no longer new, just be patient and get to know each other and what fun projects you're working on. This is the best part about this group, is that, you know, there's some things that may be able to happen in the room, or if people are watching back, they're able to figure out who to talk to. We've had a lot of people be able to do that. So, you want to start?
I can start.
Okay.
My name is Jeff Jones. I'm with Keller Williams. I've been there about 5-6 years now. Just trying to learn some stuff and have a conversation with people.
Awesome.
Hey there, I'm Candace Thompson, I'm a realtor with Keller Williams. I am not working on like a project of anything right now, so I'm here to learn. I'm excited about the topic.
Glad to hear.
Hey, my name is Jim Napke. I work for True Homes in a finance capacity, but I'm here for myself, actually, private investor stuff, looking at commercial, looking at residential.
Awesome.
My name's Terry Gorley. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams Connected.
Awesome.
Hey everyone, Fred Marsh, just investor. My wife and I have a syndication part of, we've got a property down Westminster Way. My family's done some real estate investing over time, including an 11 California. So hopefully fun.
Awesome.
I'm Key. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams Connected also. And I'm actually starting the rental for my house at property. So getting quotes, focusing on the roofing, foundation, and HVAC.
Great.
My name is Christina O. I'm with Keller Williams Connected also. I'm here because I just want to learn more about commercial and hopefully be able to network, because a lot of my customer client base has been in commercial, so I just learn.
Great. Hey, man. All right.
I'm Liz Preston, and I'm an investor. We've had, my husband and I have some single families in Lynchburg, South Carolina, but I'm looking to expand our portfolio into multifamily or commercial.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
I'm Karrie Crocker with Arbor Commercial Advisors. From an investment standpoint, I have short-term rental in Florida. My husband and I are looking more for either multifamily or just a really best deal for us, and even in the industrial space.
Awesome.
I'm Elizabeth Wilson, and I'm currently looking for a long-term rental, preferably one I can do like Section 8 with. And then I'm also doing some land flipping. I've got some things I'm going to get some buyers with land that we have the contract.
Awesome.
I'm Bridget Graves. I'm a realtor with HM Properties, and I do mostly residential, so I'm here to learn more about commercial, but I can also attest to the networking here. I met this lender right here through the Zoom. One meeting, he was commenting on a program that he had that I hadn't heard of, and so I reached out, and now we're trying to work a deal together.
And you got him to come in person finally.
Yeah.
I didn't beg, but I did say I was coming, so yeah, we have some work to do.
Awesome.
I have a 16-month-old who gets kind of, I don't know what the right word is at this time of day. It's feed me or else.
Yeah,
So-
we call it the bitching gap. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
With the moms now.
It's
Yeah.
Feed me or else out. So as she stated, I'm with a lender here called CMG. I'm interested in exploring options in the commercial space as well, just to learn as much as I can, so I can help more in that space.
And you're Matthew, right?
Yes, Matthew, sorry.
Yeah.
With CMG.
Awesome. Great. And then Mary,
Hi,
introduce yourself and what would you like to get out of the group? Please.
I am Mary Boggs. I'm with Cullen Company Connected. And I do residential right now, but I've had a couple people I had to refer out because they don't know commercial. So you're kind of learn, see if I want to tell you more.
Yeah, I mean, Carrie's gonna impress you. I actually refer 100% of my commercial stuff to her. So she's been working very hard on something for a year and a half. Hopefully we're getting close to that.
We're at the final negotiation stage, so let's.
Yeah.
Figure it out here.
Well, cool. Well, thank you. And then whenever you have a minute, if you wouldn't mind signing in. And we have some folks on virtually. So it says Matt Kilgore, but I think this is Michelle. So Michelle, would you mind introducing yourself and what you do? And then Alexandra, if Michelle can't talk, you're up.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Oh, it is Matt. Okay, cool. Hi.
Yeah, hey guys, can you see me and hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, it's Matt, Matt Kilgore. I'm a project manager with Bank of America. I have 2 residential properties and I'm looking to get into the duplex, triplex, quadplex, and then commercial real estate. So I thought it'd be cool to jump in, listen, and kind of learn a little bit.
Awesome. Glad you're here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Alexandra, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and what you do if you're available.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Alexandra Diacono. I'm a real estate agent in South Carolina with Keller Williams Connected. And I serve mostly residential, and I want to learn about commercial too.
Awesome. Glad you're here. Okay. So I'm going to put the screen on Carrie so she can talk more. But you guys are all here for commercial today. And like I said, I think Carrie is who I think of, and just from a connection standpoint, my favorite lenders all think about her too. And, you know, she's just open and caring. And so hopefully y'all will get a lot out of her today. And, yeah, so if you wouldn't mind sharing who you are and what you do, that'd be great.
I'm Karrie. I am with Arbor Commercial Advisors. Jim Pryor is the broker in charge at our firm. And interestingly enough, I was in residential real estate when I started my real estate career, but most of my deals just seemed to follow the path or were large plain deals that were better suited from a commercial marketing standpoint that just really I couldn't do my clients justice. So partnered with Jim, actually referred some things over to him, but through that I said, you know, I want to learn more. These are my, you know, they're clients of mine, some were family members of mine, but I really had a passion for land. Land seemed to be where I was at, and that led me into commercial and really just kind of diving in and learning, and I transitioned over. So when Jim started his own firm, Arbor Commercial, which means passion and enthusiasm, he really wanted to create this boutique, commercially focused real estate conglomerate, I guess, with agents that kind of had that same passion for that. We now have 10 agents. My primary focus over the last few years has been land, but given some of the market and economic trends, I'm kind of shifting that to more of a flex industrial opportunity right now. And we have two guys, Thomas and Frank, that focus on multifamily. Not that I can't help or focus, but those are the guys that are really focused on that particular, I guess, niche in the commercial space. And then, we also have Tad that'll also focus on retail. So if there's something that you're specifically interested in, even if it's not something that I feel comfortable helping you with, I can put you in touch with the right broker in our firm. But born and raised here in Indian Fort Mill area, currently live in Clover since 2007, mom of 2 girls, and been married for a very long time. To a guy that I met at Carolina Place. So, I mean, I'm really rooted in the area, some great connections. And I feel like that's been helpful as well as I've tried to navigate through some of these, I don't want to call hurdles, but it's little bumps in the road through the commercial process. And I think one thing that, as investors, especially in the commercial space, it is a process that is not quickly closed, and oftentimes can run close to 2 years from contract to close. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. So you said something a couple of times through that, specializing in niches, and your brokers, the team that you guys have, try to specialize because, sometimes it'll take 2 years. Sometimes you're negotiating an LOI, which we'll talk about jargon here in a minute. You're negotiating an LOI for a really long time, and perhaps, someone is better suited. So when you're thinking about, you love land and you love some other things, why do you think it's important for people to specialize in commercial sectors?
The way we kind of see it or view it in our firm is that we want to be the best broker for our client. And even if I work with Rebecca on one deal, she's at this point wanting land, I can help her with that. But multifamily, our guys in multifamily work strictly off market. And they have such a robust portfolio of not only investors, but owners that at any given time, if they feel and see a fit from somebody, they can reach out. They spend their days cold calling. We do cold call a lot because a lot of times I have a doctor right now who's looking for an office in Charlotte, which is pretty much non-existent. So it's a lot of cold calling and trying to get in touch with the owners and understanding what they're performing. And, is it what that cap rate is for a particular office? So it just too depends on the plate. We want to look at what our brokers as a whole have on their plate so that we can ensure that we're dedicating the particular deal. And just because if you call me and I say I can't help you, it doesn't mean that I don't want to. I just feel like for your particular search, I'm happy to stay as involved as you want, but I know that you're going to be in really good hands with anybody in our firm, and they're going to probably be able to help you, especially in that multifamily retail investment and one of the other brokers.
So you said cap rate. We talk about cap rate a lot here. However, for those that are not familiar, can you remind us what cap rate is?
Yeah, so cap rate is really, and I can't tell you, a lot of times people I'm on a cap rate of 10% plus, but you have to also look at where you're at. So if you're in, and you move closer into some of these cities, and hotspots, your cap rate's gonna be lower, and what we're seeing right now is around 4%, 5% in some of these Charlotte, A+ areas. And then as you go out to Rock Hill and some of these areas on the other side of York, you can get those cap rates about 6 to 8.
So cap rate is purchase price divided by net operating income.
I'm sorry, I did.
No, but that was great. And so really it's important. This is, and I say this all the time. If your cap rate is higher than your interest rate, then you will always win. You will always win. And so for the last few years, your interest rates were in the 4, 5, 6s as investors. And so if you had a 4% or a 5% cap rate, it didn't hurt as bad because you could always win with the the lower cap rate. But now, like I just was quoted 9% the other day, and I'm like, I can't even try to get this cap rate to 6%. It was like 3. Well, that's just not a deal I'm going to do. So there are some parameters around it that people have to make.
And right now, given the interest rates, cash buyers, it's really an opportunity for those cash buyers right now.
Yeah, great point. Thank you for that. So if I wanted to do a commercial deal, this is going to be for all of our agents who want to see if they want to do their thing. So if someone wanted to do a commercial deal, what is something you wish you knew back when that you know now that we can all learn from?
Yes. So, and this is really just the overall investment. And this is just as if I were the investor for a commercial deal. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And there may be some spin-off questions.
yes, and we'll take it. So if I were an investor and even as an agent, I would really want to understand what those financials were. And I see this every time, daily. I feel like I'm getting calls from business owners, investors, and you have to have an understanding of your financial situation, what your parameters are from a comfort level and spending, and then really put that team in place, depending on the property. And that team is going to be legal, lender, contractors from build out, and or engineers and architects. And I think when people don't have that team in place and truly understand how you need to work very closely with your municipality, that's when people get in trouble. You know, if you wanted to buy, you know, it's amazing how zoning can impact anything that you want to do. And whether it's multifamily, single family, general business, even in the retail business sector, you can't always say, I want to open a vet clinic in that retail center or purchase that house that used to be an office building and now I want to put a vet clinic there. It doesn't work like that. I think that's where people get in trouble. So I think that's what I, as an advisor in this space, I would tell investors, and even when I was a residential trying to look at things from an investing standpoint, I didn't believe it.
So if someone is looking, let's use the vet, for example. And there's rezoning, let's say that they're purchasing, because there's also leasing and all of that also goes into it. But if there's a rezone plan, when through the process would you advise your client to go through that or try to see if it's even possible?
you would need to, A, talk to your planning and zoning and understand what that process is, how long that process takes. So when you're writing an offer, you can add that timing in. If it is rezoning, rezoning can sometimes take 4 to 6 months. It's not a cheap thing. There is some funding that goes along with that, so they need to understand what those submittal costs are, and that information is easy to find. It just can take some time to get the right person in place. So you need to understand what that time cost is, time for the letter of intent, which is usually what's submitted ahead of any offer, because with any business owner or investor owner, that's where you're going to negotiate your primary terms, cost, earnest money, and then time, contract close, what that investigation period looks like. And so typically money does not go hard until in the contract, until you've gone through that rezoning process. So that is one difference, is you will not have, typically in a residential purchase, due diligence fee. Only earnest money is pretty much a business as usual standard in commercial. And once you receive that approval, you've done your investigations, will that money go hard, and then you can continue to deliver.
And at that point, like, closing is quick. Like, after all that investigation, negotiation, etc., then it goes fast. But deals die. Deals die on the front end, right?
Deals die, and it's common.
Yeah.
People don't understand how common it is for deals to die in the commercial space. And it is, even if you get to that contract, you're then held to the mercy, quite frankly, of the municipality. And if that does not go in your favor, then you're off to the next. And one other thing too is people need to understand that if you're used such as a vet, and I worked with a vet, and we found a wonderful opportunity in Fort Mill, and there were 5 other offers. We even went in at a higher purchase price because we knew we were going to go through the process, knowing that several of the other offers were probably investors. And we lost, and we were just talking about it the other day. She's like, what did they purchase it for? And they purchased it for less than what we offered. The contract close was 30 and to 45 days. So it's just those things you also have to understand as part of your negotiation. And quite frankly, they need to understand that these people are owners, business owners, and they're here to turn it and make money. And I know if I was an owner investor and I had a cash shielding and I could close it in 45 days versus 6 to 8 months, you're down there. So it's just setting that expectation and fully understanding that piece of the rezoning process. There's so many elements to the zoning piece. It could be even if you're in a retail center and your zoning, your use is allowed, there may already be a similar use. The CCNRs and restrictions and covenants of that particular retail center will not allow that use to be either beside one type of use or in there at all. So it's understanding what those deep restrictions are for that center. So it's a lot like residential in that aspect too.
That's very typical when there's a Starbucks anchor, or if there's a Harris Teeter with a Starbucks. Most of the time, if you have a friend or somebody who wants to get a coffee shop into a shopping center, it's rare that that's going to be allowed. Paneras are the same, where they have the or the CCRs restrict. So,
I'm working with the butcher shop and we can't go anywhere where there is a public service here. But there'll be a deer to look off of Goldville Road.
awesome. So one of the big things is in urban areas. So we live in Metro Charlotte area. We have downtown Clover that's about to be a highly sought after with all the press that they're doing. Gastonia, downtown Fort Mill, like all these places locally are being refreshed, and that becomes mixed use. And so you'll see where there's retail on the front, and then you'll see apartments up above. And oftentimes, if those condos, so not apartments, but condos are going for resale, it's hard to get an investor, or it's hard to get a loan on some of those properties if the retail spaces are not all filled. So when those of us who are trying to figure out some deals with our clients, and if we're thinking residential and there's a mixed use facility or space, just know that you may have to work with a cash buyer to be able to purchase a beautiful loft in the South End area. Things like that will come up when you have mixed use facilities.
But what you could do is buy it at a price that warrants the lack of occupancy, put a long-term tenant in there, and then flip it as an income stream.
Great idea. So there's a lot of market factors that they factor into the commercial real estate world, and there's barriers to entry sometimes because, and Karrie, I'm going to have you speak to it because I know you talked to Scott a few times here recently, but have you guys heard of Silicon Valley Bank? Okay, if you haven't, it's a regional bank that there was a major customer who pulled out 100% of their funds, which was like millions of dollars, and was on the golf course and texted all of his friends at the same time, and all of his friends pulled out their money. And so it literally created this challenge for a regional bank, and it happened with a couple of others here recently as well. And so we're starting to hear, actually we know that a lot of regional banks have non-FDIC secured monies, and people are very nervous about it. And so, the commercial world, they're being very picky on who's getting a loan right now and whether or not they're going to be able to fund a $3 million deal. So do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, and I can talk high level, partners such as Scott Shire. He's a great just wealth of knowledge, just in general, not specific, even to their product offerings that probably talk to something. But what he has shared and what we're seeing is that office spaces are very hard to get financed right. Just because of the amount of inventory, there's a lot of inventory for office space. We're seeing a lot more of those spaces being converted into job share type spaces versus keeping on large one-tenant opportunities. Land is starting to become very difficult to finance in, unless there's a large portion of that down payment attached. And even what, from a multifamily and development standpoint, just building costs. I mean, right now in land, the land Carriers haven't kind of come into the dark current market where interest rates are and building costs are, and they're still kind of digging their heels in on those prices that they were seeing 12 to 18 months ago. And people are just kind of like moving on. There's just no negotiation over the numbers. Interest rates are painful right now. and so are building costs. So that I think it's not that there's no one that's lending. You just have to find the lender that best suits your investment opportunity. And quite frankly, one thing that was shared too is if a lot of these banks that were more open to those folks that were skipping around based on it, and I'm starting to hear more and more, if it's not relational banking, meaning you're not breaking the deposits over, then you're not going to get a loan with that bank, even if you've done deals with them in the past, and you haven't brought your their account, deposit accounts over. They're just now saying, we're here for you. Quickly become your, relationship. So that's kind of what we're seeing. I'm not saying we can't catch you there. It's just we just have to find a lender. It's not like, here's a whole list of lenders. Now it's us getting on the phone. This is what it looks like. Are you even learning on this type of deal right now?
Do you do commercial?
We typically stay out of that space. We have broker channels for that, and some of our broker partners will do commercial. And so I'm one of the reasons I'm here is to learn more about it. So when we have something I need to refer out or put in the broker channel, I can absolutely do that with confidence and have some knowledge instead of, wow, this is a big scary space.
Yeah. And I think one of my favorite things about Scott, not that he's the only, but he is definitely he will talk through anything. Like I was in the process of acquiring a property, a multi-use, or I'm sorry, a multifamily in Rock Hill, and he was ready with the letter for me, and he was like, hey, why don't you try to negotiate like 200,000 of this seller finance, and then we'll just do the rest and package it all into the renovation. I was like, oh, that's a really great idea, Scott. And so, I think just from like a resource standpoint, he's amazing.
Yeah, he is a well.
Yes, he's been doing it a long time, so we can connect you to him for referrals.
Cool.
Okay, jargon time. So, triple net.
That is a lease type where the landlord passes off the cost to the tenant. So the tenant is usually responsible in the triple net lease for all of the expenses, whether it is internal, for the most part, all exterior too, and that also includes not only utilities, but here's another one, taxes, insurance, common area, and the tenant pays their pro rata share of that. So if you have a 5,000 square foot space, each tenant has 2,500 square feet. You take that square footage amount, add your taxes, insurance, common area maintenance. And that common area maintenance and insurance can fluctuate. So make sure that your lease states that there could be adjustments up and down that will be remedied or rectified at the end of the year. So if you have a snowstorm and you have to have your parking lot scraped, that can go into common area maintenance. If your landscaper increases their costs throughout the year, then you just pass that on. So tenants need to be aware of that, and that is very common. You can't just look at that lease rate and say they're offering at $22. you need to make them aware that there most likely is an additional, price per square foot expense. And also ask your landlords what that is. I mean, you can look at the tax record, but they should be able to tell you what the exact tax bill is, the insurance, and what those common area maintenance expenses are. So don't take your word for it.
So that, you would see that and 3 M's.
Yep.
For that. So you already talked about LOI. What other jargon items?
We talked about TICAM, TIA, tenant improvement allowance. If you have someone looking to lease a space, or you're looking to lease a space, we're investors here, so you're most likely going to be finding the tenants. Someone may ask you, what's my tenant improvement allowance? And that is a certain given amount per square foot that you're going to offer that tenant to upfit their space. This is more common in what you consider a cold dark shell space, a lot of new construction where you just go in and they give you a gravel floor and it may be wide open and you have to put in the separating walls. That's quite expensive because you're also looking at HVAC systems as well. So your price per square foot in this area is somewhere around, depending on the size of the space, I would say $40 to $70 per square foot on those cool dark shell opportunities. That number is going to fluctuate depending on what the cash is for that tenant. Some folks want to keep their cash on hand, and they're going to negotiate a higher price per square foot, but then you as the landlord, you're going to need to recoup that cost, so that price per square foot on the base rate is going to go up. I have 2 clients. They don't need a lot of tenant improvement money. They'll take in a portion, so we then negotiated a lower price per square foot. So you as the landlord have that authority to kind of go up and down on what that tenant allowance is. And even though you're giving them a higher tenant improvement allowance dollar amount per square foot, don't feel bad about increasing that base rate to recoup your costs within 5 to 7 years.
PSA.
Purchase agreement.
And
the purchase agreement is really what comes after the letter of intent. You've negotiated all those large, high-level terms. The purchase agreement, quite frankly, is LOI can go from like a 4 to 8 page document. It's typically 4 to 5 pages. And then your purchase agreement is going to be the long attorney drafted agreement that can be, I don't know, I had one the other day that was 40 pages. And you as a broker will review it, but you have an attorney partner to help you review those long contracts. And I would highly recommend that you have a very strong attorney partner if you want to have several great ones. But they are honestly going to get in the weeds, and I'm just like, we're arguing over 2 words now. But yes, purchase agreement comes after the LOI. As a broker, my job is primarily centered around that LOI, unless they sneak something in the purchase agreement.
And then percent rent / break point.
Yeah. So I just did a lease recently right here in Fort Mill, and it's becoming more and more common. So percent rent is a potential additional revenue opportunity for you as the landlord, that you still have your base rate, you still have your TICAM, but you can set a percent rent threshold for your particular tenant. And so for instance, you're gonna say, okay, they're gonna look, it's gonna be based off their gross sales amount. So you all, as a landlord too, you need to be mindful of it because you don't want it to be too low. So say, $500,000, you're gonna say, okay, anything over $500,000 in gross revenues that you make that year, I'm entitled to 5% of that. And if you're a good broker, you try to make sure you set that percent rent or at that break point to a point that's probably unachievable for them to hit. But if you're a landlord and you do have the right to do that, it's becoming more and more common here in Fort Mill, especially in Kingsley.
I believe it.
How are the monthly revenue figures verified in these cases?
It's based off gross.
No,
So
but how is the landlord verifying it? So I guess landlord wouldn't have a direct link into the accounting system. So is how the landlord know at what point the business hits the revenue?
yeah, you can request for monthly or quarterly revenue reports.
I guess those would have to be accounting verified or.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they will be accountant verified, and then you put it in touch with their attorney, and then you handle that. Mhm.
Great question.
A lot of times they try to say monthly reporting, and that's just a lot on the tenant. And
Well, it shouldn't be nowadays, but
it shouldn't be, but
especially with retail and restaurant.
I always negotiate quarterly or 6 months. It's just a lot.
So, okay. Property management.
Mhm.
Tell us more about that.
Yes. So our firm has a partner, I guess, a sister company called Karrie Property Management. We have, especially when we first started our firm, there was a tremendous need for some of our investor partners or even existing relationships that we had. They were working with property managers that they had worked with for years. Processes weren't in place, and we just saw the need. And interestingly enough, Jim's wife had been in property management for 30 plus years. She has managed some of the largest multifamily opportunities in Charlotte and developments in Charlotte, and it just was a great addition. So Kiro has really started picking up, and we've been offering that to some of our clients for the last 6 months.
Awesome. So, when thinking about leases, and we're going to open it up to y'all for some questions after Karrie shares specifics, but when thinking about leases still, when dark shell, for example, what should we expect from like years? Like if the landlord's going to pay for some of the upfit, and also knowing that the upfit is theirs, like it stays with the building, it doesn't go with the tenant. How long of those leases are you typically seeing negotiated?
It depends on the type of upfit. Right now, I'm working with the company, and they are putting close to $1 million of a test kitchen and offsite photography, 10 years. Typically in any type of culinary restaurant, those are 10-year leases just due to the upfit. Full dark shell for general retail, whether it is, your boutique, general office space in a retail center, those are typically 5 years with tenant improvement allowance. If it's a cold dark shell, you're not going to see something 3 years. It's just not going to cash out or
Yeah.
paying out for the landlord.
Downtown Charlotte back in, I think it was 2009. So after the recession kind of settled, I mean, it didn't settle, but like, you know, people, companies left, right? And so then there was a lot of vacancies. The city planner made or helped a lot of restaurants come to downtown Charlotte or uptown Charlotte with incentives like, hey, let's just test this out for 3 years. We're going to pay, you know, here's half rent for these beautiful spaces. And like, I think one of the best examples of that was Deference on the corner of Uptown. And when their lease came up for renewal again, they were like, we can't afford this. And then it happened again, like in 2020. You probably know more about this because you're uptown, but you know, these restaurants who got deals during recession periods, like all of a sudden now times are good, they can't afford the $17,000 lease, right? And so they're finding other places or like the new places that are actually providing incentives. And so it's just fascinating to watch some of these restaurants and some of these boutiques. Overstreet Mall is another great example. Like they all found cheaper spots in South End or in South Park versus being in the Overstreet Mall where there's no traffic while people are working from home. So, you know, to Karrie's point, like there's going to be some massive opportunities for cash buyers here soon because these are all going to come vacant and the landlords are going to need to find tenants or knock down some buildings.
Right. And you were very excited.
Well, I mean, that's why like these cafeteria style, like Optimus Hall, what a brilliant idea. Or like there's a new one. What?
Urban District Market.
Yeah. Or like Powerhouse. Like how smart is that? We're gonna see those everywhere.
I just read an article on Monday. I wish I could remember the numbers, but it was in our CoStar News and they were talking about that exact concept. This cafeteria style food court has grown exponentially over the last 2 years. And it's catching on and they don't foresee it going away.
Yeah. And then on the opposite spectrum, WeWork lost what, $357 million last quarter. And so I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, We Broke or We Crashed or whatever. It's the story of WeWork and the demise of it, but it's a fascinating movie. And now looking at like COVID hurt that. And people are not necessarily going into these high-rise buildings that they paid all this money for. And so co-share is definitely working, but not having 40 different companies in a high-rise building. So it's just, you know, what's the new innovation? What's the new, we watched Blackberry the other night, like another great movie. They didn't innovate. That's why we don't have Blackberries anymore. So it's like, how do we figure out what the next innovation is and get on that side? And seeing and talking to a lot of people in that sector, that's how you get great ideas.
Who's responsible for the maintenance and repair of the buildings? Is it the tenants or is it the landlord? So for example, a restaurant space, right? Like if a refrigerator or a stove goes out, who's responsible for it?
And everything's negotiable, but yes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so for instance, HVAC, if you're a tenant going into an established space, HVAC's already there and it has been there, the landlord should deliver it in working order. The tenant would most likely have a responsibility where they have to have a quarterly maintenance program, and then they're responsible for a certain amount of repairs up to say $2,500 $100 annually. If it's a new space, cool dark shell, they're responsible for putting in that HVAC unit, depending on how that, lease looks, but at that point, you would not give an annual cap for repairs. They're responsible for that. But anything interior, that would be considered a fixture that you brought in at your.
Have you seen, going back to the HVAC, so, an established building and the tenant, let's just say they had let's say they had a $250 occurrence, per occurrence, and then the cap instead of being 2,500, let's just say it's a little bit less, like 1,500. Have you, seen where if the, unit keeps breaking, is there a point or is there something you should have in writing that, okay, the owner will, you know, at what point will the owner then fix it?
So honestly, he'll probably, unless it's just gonna be a continued issue, or they will continue to push that within the parameters of the lease. So if it's, would you say $150?
$250 per occurrence.
Yes, so per occurrence up to the 1,500. We'll probably start sinking some money into it once he has to pay more, so that it's a done deal for him. But I mean, it depends on the landlord, quite frankly. He might push the limit on it until his pockets are hurt a little bit more, and then the case by case. But yeah, you're not going to have any, I guess, legal, and I guess it's scenario by scenario and consult with your attorney, but looking at your lease, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing according to the lease, you're responsible for that 150 up to 1,500.
What other questions do you guys have?
Going back to the lease going to renewal, in the commercial sphere, is it possible to have lease agreements longer than a year? Or,
Oh, yeah.
okay,
Yeah. You don't see very many 1-year leases, especially in retail centers or flex spaces or office spaces. They're, I would say, if they've already got an established built out tenant, then they're typically 3 at the least. For instance, I'm working, and I'm trying to talk the landlord into going, once we get his rental rates up to market rate, his tenants are paying well below market rate right now. And it is a huge shock for these tenants that are paying about $3.50 to $4. And now we're stopping tightening on top of it. But my job as his broker is to get him a valuable and marketable investment property. Because if we try to market it, everybody's coming up on renewals. And then I know we're going to have to incrementally increase these guys, but we're doing it in a way that we're only giving them 3 years. One of those asked for 1 because they need more space, and I'm happy to do it because that means when he leaves, I can slap somebody in there that's at the existing market rate, and that's better for my client, who's the landlord. So you want to make sure that what that negotiated rate is if you're doing a long-term lease, is at least at market rate. You're not starting below on what market rate is on a long-term lease, because that's just going to put you further behind when that lease renewal comes up, and they'll probably have to leave.
I have a couple of questions. I'm hoping I don't forget them. So you had talked about when we were going over like common jargon, triple net. Is there some other, types of, I guess, lease things?
So modified gross is another one where some of these
office suite spaces, that you see around, that's a modified gross lease typically because, all or a portion of your utilities are included in that. So I know if you were like Sunview Suites and Baxter, that's modified gross, and they cover all the utilities but internet. And same with, what is that called? Sun Village over there near TD Bank on Gold Hill Road. They have, you can rent like a 1,500 square foot space down to 400, and you may be paying a price per square foot, but within that price per square foot, your utilities are included in that. You don't have that extra can either.
And what are you saying for like, typically how long it takes to negotiate a lease?
It depends on the landlord, your client, or the tenant, and the attorney. Once you get to the attorney phase, and we need to set the expectation very quickly that it's with the attorney. It's going to take them 2 weeks or they're a week behind. Quite frankly, it's 2 to 4 weeks to get to the LOI.
What kind of attorney is that?
It's a real estate attorney.
Okay.
And, you know, like Chrissy Bean, Trey Nance, they do residential and commercial, Trent Womble and Rock Hill, all great.
So are these attorneys that us as agents go and work with?
Yep, I just, as soon as I get a signed LOI, I pull all the documents, I send them, if there's a property manager, the property manager contact, the CCRs, you know, if I have any, similar to what you guys, survey, all that information, I send it over to the attorney. And, what we'll do is, I haven't had them much lately before they either write the purchase agreement or we're reviewing one that a landlord or has provided. There's been times where it's been difficult, like there's a part owner financing included in that, where we'll get on the phone and kind of review everything before they put the purchase agreement in. It's just, I just really dated up to them and then give them a very thorough overview of, okay, here's the LOI. I've highlighted these things. Reference page number, the CCNRs, do you have concern with this terminology? And going back to the vet, one of the tenants in a condo suite purchase had issue with the word maintain. They said that they could argue the word maintain was not boarding, not keeping, and unfortunately, after attorneys were involved, they said a judge would have to decide, so we had to step away 2.5 weeks before closing. So with the amount of time that you talked about, you know, several times that it takes on these deals and involving an attorney, these attorney fees are going to be substantially higher than residential transactions.
Depending on the deal, they typically ask for a retainer. And depending on the attorney, it could be 1,500 or 25. That's usually what we see. And they're so versed in it, whether it's residential or commercial, you're still paying for title, you're still paying for closing and your typical closing costs. They're just involved a bit more on the front end purchase agreement. Rarely do I write a contract. I would almost say never do I use a state form because it is not 100% protective.
So the attorney you use draws that up for you. What about the letter of intent? Is that a template? Is that a form? Or is that just somebody just scribbling out, you know, this is what I want?
I draft that typically. I've done them so many now, I just kind of have my own templates. But it's a letterhead. It's a letterhead, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's something the agent usually does, not the client.
Oh, the client, that we would do that for them on their behalf, just to ensure that we're.
That's like the biggest piece. That's like why having a broker is the best.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I've done, so I do land separately. And we do LOIs all the time, and it's just on a letterhead. And we negotiate everything from the front end, how much money is gonna go into the pot of the due diligence, well, not due diligence, but like their expenses. And we get seller, like if we're clearing trees to figure things out, seller's paying for a lot of that, so. Yeah.
Yep, and with land development, you have to be mindful of rollback taxes. And who is paying for that? So if you're a seller of land and you've had it for some time and you've had it in a tax bracket that is ag or something that's considered a discounted tax bracket, the county's gonna get theirs. And they're typically gonna be paying the difference between what you paid and what, just what, I'm drawing a blank, but what that general tax rate would be. And it can be significant. I've got a deal I'm working on now, it's $205,000 on back taxes.
We have a friend an agent friend who closed the deal. The attorney, so pulled title, everything, it closed. And the new owners that she helped are now getting hit with rollback taxes. But I don't know how it played out. I'll probably have to check in with her. But what I told her was because the title, they got title insurance, that should cover them because it was finalized with the attorney and the title pull. It wasn't discovered. And so she hopefully shared that with her clients, but they got, I think it was like $124,000 because they changed the use of the property from farming to, I think, residential.
So also call your tax office. Now, a lot of times it's, if it's, for instance, 50 acres and there's a house on it, 48 of those acres are considered farm, ag, in that discounted tax rate, and that 2 acres is standard at residential.
And one of the big things is like, if you're representing a client who's selling 50 acres, for example, and they have it zone or it's deemed agricultural or farm land and they're getting taxed at that rate. And if they're doing the $1,000 of revenue that they are earning in order to keep it there, if you are the selling agent, selling broker, and the buyer is also, coming together and there's no representation, it would behoove you to at least mention that that is what's happening. Because otherwise, they don't know unless they're in the world of farming that in order to keep and maintain that farming, they have to earn $1,000 or more of revenue. Like that's the biggest thing with all your counties is like, do your research, disclose the right thing, and try to get a survey.
And tax classification is different from zoning.
So when they roll it back, how far do they go back?
Typically 3 years.
And that's just if the use changes?
Yes.
And does it go back to when the use started or before?
The last 3 years. So if we're in 2023, they're going to take it back to 2020 or 2019, depending on when it's closed.
But again, if you're buying agricultural, in order to maintain that, you have to do the revenue part. You have to use it for agricultural. You can't all of a sudden start subletting or subleasing, subdividing the land and build, R40 or whatever now. It'll be taxed at a higher bracket.
So how are you proving that you're getting $1,000? Or you just telling them you're getting?
The county's gonna have guidelines on how you report that. Tax office, assessor's office, by the way.
But if you subdivide it or put residential on it, you've got to change the zoning.
Yes,
That would change the tax bracket, correct?
you may or may not need to change the zoning, but it would change the tax bracket.
Changes the use.
Right.
So you're actually, so like Union County, for example, you can NEC and agricultural is, you can also do residential on those.
Yeah.
But again, you're gonna see the tax totally change on that land if you start doing something else.
My property on 40,000 is 53.
Yeah.
So it's still under the farm program.
It's a great example.
I'm assuming it's changed it by now, but, you know, it's whatever taxes be.
Yeah.
And it's on the buyer.
So if I change the use today, I have to pay taxes as of today's use 3 years back.
Right.
So a deal that we're negotiating now, it's 100 acres. It is one density residential, which allows 1.5 units per acre. 1 acre is taxed as residential. The other is taxed as ag. The buyer is not going, they're gonna take it as a by right use. So they're interested in a by right use. They're not changing the zoning, but they're gonna be taking it residential. So unfortunately, it's subject to rollback tax.
Is that standard practice from jurisdiction to jurisdiction?
Jurisdiction, county.
So when you're in that type of scenario, because I just had a land deal, and I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just gonna be honest and transparent about it. I didn't. But anytime I see a box, and depending on who I'm representing, I'm gonna check the box. So I would represent the buyer, and I used the standard South Carolina form. I didn't know what rollback taxes were. And I saw the box that said seller or buyer, and I just checked seller. The listing agent, this was his first land transaction, so he didn't know what he was doing. And neither one of us discussed that point. Well, it came up at closing, and my buyer was buying, it was like 8 acres or whatever, or not 8 acres, 4-point-something acres. But I wrote it specifically in the contract. The buyer's intent is to subdivide this property, so that she can build a family compound, because her and her children were buying property. And so I put that in there and I checked that box. Well, when it came down to closing and the attorney was getting, this was a cash transaction, so the attorney was getting the HUD together. And he was like, well, I see that the buyer's agent did check that the seller is paying the rollback taxes and everything's agreed upon. So the rollback taxes are, because it's 3 acres, not 3 acres, it's gonna be 3 residential lots. We're gonna charge the seller, and it was like, it wasn't that much. It really ended up being, this was for $2,600 or somewhere around in there. And the seller balked at it. And the agent was like, well, Candace knew that we were only selling, this is one big parcel, not, but the way I wrote it, and I didn't know to do it that way. I just wanted them to know what our intentions were, that we needed to be able to perk this land in 3 separate spots. So that's why I made sure I wrote in there, like, gotta be able to have 3 houses.
Right thing.
Yeah, right. And so they ended up funding it, but they bought it. But in that instance, if I was representing the seller, my mind would say, you're the one changing the usage. So why shouldn't the buyer be responsible? Negotiation. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but you protected your client.
And if on that contract, it says if the box is not checked, if no box is checked, it becomes a seller expense or buyer expense. Seller expense.
What are some other, if let's say
you know, because a few of us in here are residential real estate agents, and we just want to help a client here and there. Big things that we feel like is just too out of our scope that we want to pass off to you, or, you know, whatever, like, but as a residential broker or as a real estate agent license, we can sell, we can do, you know, commercial, but of course, that's not where we are, you know, focused. What would you say for an agent like ourselves, that's wanting to get into it a little bit? I know our MLS and Canopy has some commercial stuff listed, but is there a separate commercial something in the Charlotte area? I know I looked on LoopNet, but is there something else that we should also be possibly looking at? Is there a network of commercial brokers, like something that you guys typically go to network with one another, that if we knew about it, we could kind of now start coming into that sector and that space?
So our firm does pay if there's a deal that you are not comfortable handling. We pay a referral fee. Typically that's 20% of the deal. And but to answer your question, our MLS that we use, I still have access to MLS. I use it strictly for scouting residential and land deals for clients. Or not residential, commercial and land deals for clients, but our it's called Crexy or CoStar. LoopNet is part of CoStar. However, what you see as a non-subscriber is not everything that we as a subscriber see.
Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, so here in Charlotte, we have a commercial board of realtors.
Yeah.
So, and some firms in Charlotte at least will let you work commercial and residential, so Cullen Company is one.
Yeah.
And then another group of realtors will hang their license for residential with one firm and their license for commercial.
So you can hang your license like that in 2 different.
North Carolina.
Certain times out, like can't bill affiliate in South Carolina.
Yeah. But there's CBRE, or excuse me, CREA, CBR. There you go. And then
What's that?
The Charlotte Commercial Board of Realtors.
Yeah. And it's an association, just like Canopy.
Yeah. They meet monthly.
Yeah.
There's meetups and stuff.
Yeah, but there's ICSC, that's retail commercial groups. They hold meetups pretty regularly, and then depending on the time of the year, they just had a huge convention. When was it? 4 months ago, and then of course they go out to Vegas. It's where a lot of heavy hitter deals. You're a retailer in that commercial space, you go there.
I think one of the biggest things is not everything, but a lot happens off market in that world. And if you're not in networking moments and you're not in groups like this, like you totally miss out on opportunity. And so like multi-unit almost exclusively happens in conversations. Like every single time I get a client that says, "Hey, I wanna do this," I'm like, "Okay, well, this, like, we're literally just gonna have to connect the dots, right?"
Yeah.
Like, it's not gonna be listed because there's gonna be thousands of offers if it's listed, right? And then across the country, like we have a friend out in Kansas City who just presented a deal to one of our investors because I was chatting with her about my client's thing. And so he was willing to invest anywhere, and we just made that deal happen. So.
Yeah, it is, especially in that multifamily space, off deals. They say it's dead if it hits where things are.
If we were
prefer to work with a commercial realtor in a commercial space, but our residential realtor had already shown us commercial property. Could we go to someone like you or a commercial realtor as long as the residential realtor was okay, or?
Yeah, I would just say in that scenario, have a conversation with your your residential filter. We still are held to the same agency agreement. So if you're in an agency agreement with, even if it's residential, there has to be a conversation. So I think it's just a discussion that you would have to have with them. And then even in the commercial space, we never want to step on toes and take somebody's client. So I think that's a decision. And I always ask folks that are sent to me, or they come to me, and are you working with anybody? And, it's respect. And I think it's, with Rebecca and I, it's just part of the relationship building and teamwork and building that network.
Yeah. Like my best friend who refers us a lot of business on the residential side is like, hey, I don't think this is you, but my friend has a restaurant that he needs in Mount Holly or whatever. And I was like, yep, not me. I'm going to connect you to Karrie. I was like, I don't even know what to do or how to do it. And I immediately just connected him to Karrie, and she took over.
Yeah. And sometimes too, these are business owners and they're busy, and in this instance, we spoke within a matter of days, and he shared with me kind of like his day and what it looks like. And, I've reached back out, and it's just a matter of when he can get back to me, and I'm mindful of that. And in some situations, I just pop up, be like, hi. You just have to read the individual and the client. And then how I manage those relationships is I just call every once in a while and say, hey, it's not dead in the water. It didn't fall into a black hole, like the one that she mentioned, that we've literally been working this for a year and a half. And it's not a matter of us not looking at spaces. It is a corporation, and they have red tape upon red tape upon red tape. And it's just what it is. I mean, we've identified a space now for about 4 months, and we just now got to second round of LOI feedback. And we're trying to get approvals. So we're about to have red tape. Like, let's just hand it off.
How involved are you with the tenants pro forma?
It depends. Like if it's an investment property, we would take a look at it, throw it in a spreadsheet, look at it, say, okay, if we get this up, like Rebecca mentioned, if we could get some sort of seller financing for a portion of it. And, we work in tandem with the lender, but I'm the one that's usually collecting the information, filling in the dots, depending on the lender. They may throw me a spreadsheet. I already have my spreadsheets.
What is pro forma?
It's really just essentially the financial insight into your company or the building or whatever.
So if there's not if this is a new business, for example, then their business plan, to be totally honest, if they're looking for lending, they're probably not going to win. But if there's a business plan together, if there's financials together, if there's a proven system, that's all part of that pro forma. Like every end of the year for my real estate business, we put together a pro forma for the next year, every year.
So if they're a new business, they're going to need to put a business plan together, and there is a great department at Winthrop that can help you put that together. You just make an appointment and they can assist. And
Is that small business?
yeah. And So they're gonna need that. They're also gonna need, if they don't have, their needs are performa if it's a new business. And I've had people kind of balk at having to provide at least 2 years of your personal tax returns. Unfortunately,
Typically, I know from the lending space, 3 years for commercial. I want to see 3 years of decent P&L before they'll even look at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Revenue growth, yeah.
so you have to have that. And I've had to turn some folks away that just won't provide it. They're like, I don't understand. Unfortunately, it's the environment.
And it's also, this is something that I thought was strange, and I get it now. LinkedIn, like that, if they have a great LinkedIn profile complete, it helps with the relationship to the banks. Because that's what the banks are going to be looking at.
I asked that because I know some people that are good business people, they're horrible numbers.
Yeah.
You know, they're good at what they do, but they're horrible on the business side of it, so.
Oh, were you asking me?
Oh,
Like,
no, just for, you answered the question.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can take their pro forma or there's some high level numbers and put together, you know, a quick spreadsheet, but detailed and accurate, you know, we would work with the lender to
Yeah. QuickBooks is really great.
Yeah.
Like just even the free version, it helps. Any other questions? I want to be respectful of your time. Yep.
Are there any, like, podcasts or, books or something like, you know, that you would recommend, like, you know, to a budding commercial person, whether or not they're planning to get into it, like, to help others? I know myself, I would like to get into commercial, to buy some commercial stuff, and I own a multifamily 5-unit building. So it falls under commercial, though I still look at it as residential. So just, you know, just so that you know a little bit more, because for me, it's been more of a, fail forward, if that makes sense, you know, and just kind of just doing whatever and like throwing bricks at the wall and big sticks.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, this is kind of working here, but
You're so cute. I love it.
Yeah, I can send a list to Rebecca, and from a podcast perspective, I probably listen to the same one she do bigger pocket. You know, like commercial, yeah, commercial education, commercial real estate for dummies, you know, something like that. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of the podcasts that you know, ROI News is great. They have some free trainings. ROI News.
You don't get like a million emails from them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Actually,
yeah, they get free trainings a lot, and they're actually really good. Especially if you can get one that talks about analysis. I can send a list of books here. I actually have them.
that'd be great. We do a recap, so, and we'll send out slides that we kind of used to keep us on track. So, did everyone feel like they got what they wanted out of this? If they didn't, how did they get in touch with you?
They can call me, email me. I have business cards that I can give out tonight, and feel free, even if you wanted to get together for a coffee, or you know, or to bring some of our colleagues, my colleagues in the firm, and if I can't see them in the meeting.
And on the actual slide on this is Karrie's contact info. So I'm gonna turn off the video. Bye, y'all.